Knowing the difference between a teacher or a trainer, a mentor, and a coach is critical if you're trying to learn and master something new. And it's even more important if you are the one providing one of those services in the marketplace. So we'll talk about all of that and more in this episode of Unleash the Awesome.
Welcome to Unleash the Awesome with Dave Gambrill. All of us have unique skills, talents, and abilities that aren't being used to their full potential. Our mission is to share the people, tools, apps, and other resources that will help you unleash your awesome on the world.
Yo, what's up? It's Dave. Welcome to another episode of Unleash the Awesome. Today, let's talk about the difference, or at least the main differences, between a teacher or trainer, a mentor, and a coach. And I think these words are tossed around without much thought. One of my mentors actually said the word coach is the most bastardized word in the English language. And so I think it's important to understand the difference between those names, those titles, those words, and what those people actually do from two perspectives. One, if you are seeking out information and you want some help or need some help to get better at something, you need to know kind of what you're getting. And so being able to pick and choose who might be able to help you best or what role might be able to help you best, I think is critical. But the other one is, because I know a lot of people in my audience are speakers, trainers, coaches, consultants, etc. You need to know when you're wearing which hat and why. And maybe you don't wear all the hats, maybe just focus on one. But I think by the time we're done with our conversation here, you'll see that you probably do wear all the hats, but you just wear one more than the other. So a trainer, a teacher, what is that? A teacher or trainer is somebody who can take information, synthesize it, and teach people how to start something or do something essentially from scratch, from the beginning. And a teacher or a trainer need not necessarily have personal experience and or success doing those things. Like if I was a good teacher or trainer, I could go and watch something, learn something, pay attention to something, interview some people, and come back from those experiences and say, okay, here's what I learned. And I can synthesize that information, put it into a framework, and teach you the steps, teach you the process. Even though I might not have gone through any of those things myself. I might not have prior to that, any subject matter expertise, and I certainly don't have any experience. So I can certainly teach you how to do it. There's a book that Tony Robbins wrote called Money, Master the Game. And essentially it's just interviews with a bunch of really, really smart traders and money managers and consultants, financial consultants, things like that, where he went after the top people in the world in those roles, those professions. And his book is basically his reporting of what those people do, what their expertise is, what they suggest that you perhaps might do if you're in a certain situation financially. If you think about the book Think and Grow Rich, which everybody likes to talk about and read, Napoleon Hill did not have any real personal success, at least not to the level of the people in the book that he talks about, right? He was kind of like a reporter expert. He went and he got commissioned to go look at some of the most popular, and not popular, well, I guess they were popular, but the most successful people in the world at the time and figure out what it is they were doing, what were the traits that they had, and he came back and reported on it, right? So he's a teacher or a trainer, and there's certainly value in taking that information and synthesizing and training it. One other example I'll give you before we move on to a mentor. If you think about Captain Sullenberger, the guy who successfully ditched a passenger airplane into the Hudson River and everybody survived, right? The person that trained him, the person that taught him, had no personal experience in ditching a plane successfully in the Hudson River. Now, maybe they had some personal experience in ditching a plane. Maybe they had some experience in ditching a plane in a body of water, but they didn't have that specific experience. So they trained him on what to do after a bird strike, right? After your engines get hit by birds, how to power down, how to find a safe place to land. Perhaps there was also a separate module in how to put it in the water, but the person, the trainer, the teacher who trained him on that didn't have any personal experience with it, had never done it before. And yet he was able to take that information and use it and land the plane successfully in a body of water, right? So teachers and instructors and trainers, very important. If you don't have the foundational pieces of what it is you're trying to learn or what you're trying to do on the path of mastery, then you certainly can't master it. So you need the beginning pieces. You need the foundation. You need somebody to teach you the ABCs, the 1, 2, 3s, okay? So that is the role of a teacher and a trainer, and that's what a teacher and trainer does. The second one would be a mentor. So to me, a mentor is somebody who has some subject matter expertise in the thing that they're talking about or sharing, and they also probably have personal experience with it. Meaning not only do they know what they're doing and they're subject matter expert, but they've had success in the marketplace. And typically, when they teach you from their vantage point. So they're very much like a teacher. They can teach you some things. They can synthesize some things, and maybe through their experience. But when they teach it or share it with you, they tend to do it through their own eyes, through their own perspective. Here's what I did. Here's what I've done. Here's the situation I ran into, and here's what I did. So there's tremendous value there, because that is where knowledge starts to become wisdom, because people that have faced it in the real world can share with you now their real world experiences. If we use Captain Sullenberger as an example, he goes around now telling people from his first person experience how to successfully navigate emergency situations, but specifically in the airline industry and in a body of water, right? Because he's done it. So we can talk about that. So yes, he's probably a good trainer and teacher anyway, because he was a subject matter expert, but now you can consider him a mentor because he has personal experience going through these things. And so as you're looking for somebody in that role, two things to think about. One, they probably have great information. Two, they probably have great information on how to apply it in that specific situation or the industry. However, the rate limiting step you need to be aware of is that it is probably limited to their own expertise, unless they're wearing multiple hats, which they could be doing. They can go back and forth between multiple roles. But if you are getting mentorship from somebody specifically, and all they keep telling you is, this is what I did, this is a situation I faced, and this is what I did, understand there's a lot of value there, but the way things change in the environment, it's often that the information that the person is sharing with you from their first world experience is probably outdated, right? So I can talk to my kids, right? I have older kids, right, 16 to early 20s, and I can share with them what happened to me when I was a kid and some of the stuff I went through. But the world is an entirely different place right now than it was back in the 1980s and early 90s, right? So I can share some experiences, I can share some things I went through, and I can help them understand how I made those decisions. But the value pretty much stops there, because they have their own information, their own experience, their own skill sets, their own personality, and the world is a different world, right? So you have to know where that value of that kind of thing stops, okay? So the first one is teacher or trainer. The second one is a mentor. And then the third one is a coach. And to me, a coach is somebody who doesn't necessarily need to have subject matter expertise, but needs to understand human performance, psychology, things like that. The mental game, if you will. So I think about a book that I read, and I'll put the links to all this stuff in the show notes for you, but there's a book by a guy named Tim Gallwey called The Inner Game of Tennis. And what happened in that book, I'll just give you a brief overview of it. They took some skiing instructors, some snow skiing instructors, trainers, coaches, and they took them to a tennis academy, and they dressed them in tennis attire, and they told the tennis players at the academy that these were their coaches. Right? They didn't say, like, here are your tennis coaches. They just said, here are your coaches. And the instructors, the ski instructors, went out and successfully coached tennis players in how to become better tennis players. Because if you believe the fundamental concept of the answers are within the participant, right? So from a coaching environment, you believe that the answers are within the participant. You don't need to feed them with more information. You need to help them navigate that information in their own head and in their own body. So a coach usually doesn't provide any more information. They just provide some clarity through their questions, through their questioning, their line of questioning, how they do it. So these ski instructors went down and coached these people to become better tennis players, because what they would ask them is, that maybe, let's say they're working on their tennis serve, and the person would serve it and it would go long, and they would say, okay, do it again. And they'd serve it and it would go long, and they'd do it again and they'd serve it and it would still go long. And so the instructor, because they had some good coaching skills, would say, how did that feel? And the person would say, well, not great, because it went out of bounds. It was long. Okay, why? Why do you think it did that? Well, because I hit it too hard, or I hit it, I struck it at this point in the air when I probably should have hit it more here. Okay, cool, do it again. Right? Or what do you think you should do differently? Well, I should probably hit it here instead. Okay, cool, do it again. Right? And they do it again. And then maybe they hit it in this time. And the coach says, how did I feel? Well, I felt better. What did you think of the result? It was great. It was in bounds, but it wasn't hard enough. Okay, so what do you think you need to do to hit it hard enough, or hit it harder? Well, I need to do this. Okay, try it. Right? And they just went through that process over and over again. So that is what a coach does, right? Ask really good questions. When I am helping people through building their digital empire, right? I have a group called Digital Marketing Mentorship on Facebook. I'll put the link in the comments or show notes for you, where I teach people and I show people from my first person experience, but also as a reporter expert through some other people's experience, what I'm doing, how I'm doing it, how I started a podcast, how I started a Facebook group, how I build my email list, all of those things. But then if these people become coaching clients of mine, I typically don't give them much more information, because I know they already have a foundational bit of information. So this is where people can get jammed up with coaching. And let's make sure that you understand this, so this doesn't happen to you as a coachee or participant, or it doesn't happen to you as you're trying to coach somebody, okay? In order for you to coach somebody successfully, or to be coached, you do have to have some level of subject matter expertise in what you're doing. The coach maybe doesn't. Sometimes it's helpful. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's helpful for them to not have anything, because they won't be afraid to ask questions, or they don't have assumptions already baked in as to what they're trying to do, right? So it's a fresh set of eyes. They ask really good questions. So a great coach might not even need subject matter expertise. But as the participant, you do need some, because a coach is going to ask you, what do you think you should do, right? So if you came to a coach and said, well, I'm at this crossroads with my digital marketing, what do you think I should do? And if you don't have any idea what to do, or any options, or any subject matter expertise or experience, and they say, well, what do you think you should do? And you're like, I don't know. That's why I'm asking. And if they just keep saying, well, what do you think? What if you had to find an answer, what would you do? Now, you could, as a coach, get them to go find their own answers and find their own training and read a book or find a course or something. So yes, you could lead them in that direction. But generally, if you want to move quicker and have people going, they have to have some knowledge, okay? And again, we could argue the semantics of this all day long, right? But this is just for basic discussion for you to think about these three different hats that you could be wearing, or three different things that you could be buying in the marketplace if you're the participant. So I did an episode of this podcast called, let me make sure I find it. It was episode 4, How to Master the 4 Phases of Learning for Peak Performance. And the reason why I'm referencing that is because I believe, and Ken Blanchard teaches this too in a situational leadership course, of which I am certified to teach myself, that, if you think about the 4 phases of learning, there's 4 phases. There's the, what Blanchard calls the enthusiastic beginner, but what you may have heard is the unconscious incompetent, meaning you don't even know what you don't know, but you're excited about it, right? That's why he calls it the enthusiastic beginner. So you're like, this sounds great. I don't know what I'm doing, but yeah, let's do it, right? So when I say like, oh, you should build an email list or build a podcast or start a podcast, whatever, people are like, oh yeah, sounds great. I want to do it. Okay. Unconscious incompetence. They don't even know what they don't know, and they're probably in for a rude awakening on some of these things. The second phase is conscious incompetence. Okay, so I believe that if you're going to be successful with coaching, either as a coach or a participant, they need to have at least moved to this phase, and probably ideally to the next phase, but at least there needs to be some conscious incompetence, meaning they now know that there's an information gap. They know that they don't know. And so they might start to seek out some information to help them know, to help them get that baseline, to help them understand. Yeah, so the second phase is that. Now, the third phase, which I think is a sweet spot for coaching, this phase and above, would be conscious competence, meaning you know what you're doing, but you have to think about it. So you're always thinking about it. You're like, okay, what is my next step? What do I have to do now? And so if you have that level of knowledge or information or expertise, and then a coach comes in and layers that on top, right? So now you know what you're doing, and the coach says, well, how did that feel? And I'm like, it didn't feel right. It felt like this. Okay, well, what should you do differently? What do you think you should do differently? I should do this. Okay, why don't you go ahead and try it? Okay, awesome. And then they do it, and then you say, okay, well, how did that feel? I felt better because I did this. Okay, what would happen if you did that or did this or whatever? Or what happened if you just repeated that again? Could we get the same results? Oh, I don't know. Let's try it. All right, so continuing to ask those questions, a coach can really help there. And then the next phase is unconscious competence, meaning you know what you're doing. You don't need to think about it. Like Michael Jordan did not need to think about how he shot a basketball. Initially, when he first started and he got cut from his middle school team, yeah, he had to think about taking his shots. And he eventually did so many shots, took so many shots, and was so good that he didn't need to think about how to take a shot, how to shoot a basketball. However, when his coach, Phil Jackson, would ask him questions coming off the court now, right, because he has this level of unconscious competence, he would say, how did that feel? What do you think you should do differently? Or what did you think about the outcome? What do you think we could do differently? Like those kind of things. Then that's where coaching can be super impactful too, because sometimes you're not even thinking about what you're doing, so you don't analyze it enough to try to correct it or make it better. Or you get to the point sometimes where this is where ego gets in the way, like, I'm good at this, I don't need any help. Okay, so I think the sweet spot is the conscious competence, somebody who says, I now know what I'm doing and I can do it, but I'm open to some coaching and I want some help. And then the next phase is the unconscious competence. Sometimes those people are like, nah, I don't need any help. I don't need any coaching. So think about that as you are learning something, or as you're trying to teach somebody something, or you're trying to coach them and understanding the difference in those things. Again, if you want to do a deeper dive on the 4 phases of learning, go listen to episode 4. Link is in the show notes for you. So I'll give you one more example, okay, that will teach you kind of all these things, I think. My son recently went for a job. This was probably 6 months ago, 7 months ago, something like that, as a busboy in a very nice restaurant. And I had never done that before. And so I couldn't really give him any guidance on it. He got the job because he's a hard worker. He presents himself well, and they needed help. So they gave him the job, and the person who was the current busser and who he was going to work with showed him what he needed to do. He taught him, this is how you clear a table, which my son had some idea that you had to clear the table, but he didn't know how to set the table. This was a nice restaurant. Like, what's with all these silverware and all of these cups and plates and bowls? Like, where does all this stuff go? So the person who is training him or teaching him said, this is where you put the plate. This is where you put the knife. This is where you put this glass. This is where you put this glass. This is where you put this other plate. This is why there's 2 plates, right? All these things. So just basic information, sharing the information, teaching or training. And then they would say, after my son kind of got the hang of it, he would say, okay, so me as the person who's been working here a long time, or the trainer or the mentor now, here's sometimes what I do to help clear the table faster. I'll do this, this, and this. And sometimes I do this, this, and this. And sometimes I'll take this, this, and this, or I'll ask somebody to do this while I do this. Okay, so now we have some mentorship coming into play. This is stuff that I do. This is stuff that I have done that has been successful, and maybe you should think about doing it too. So this person went from trainer or teacher to mentor, okay? Probably all in the same conversation. So then sometimes I would pick up my son and I'd say, hey, how was work? And he would say, it was awful because of this, or we had a big event and this happened. Now, I don't have any first-person experience or subject matter expertise, so I can't teach or train, and I certainly couldn't mentor, but I am a certified and pretty well-trained and successful coach. So I would say things, because we had about a 15-minute car ride home. Well, first I would say, do you want to talk about it? Just to see, ask permission, and he would say, yeah. I'd say, what do you think went well? Right, let's focus on the positives. Well, this and this and this. Okay. So what do you think you could have done differently for more of that to happen? Well, we could have done this, that, and whatever. Okay. What do you think didn't go so well? Well, this was a disaster, and here's why. Okay, why? Like, help me understand how it got there. That's a good coaching phrase, by the way. Help me understand. Help me understand how it got there. Well, this happened and this happened. What do you think you could do to prevent that in the future? All right, so I had no mentorship capabilities because I'd never done that myself, no teaching or training. But as a coach with no subject matter expertise, I could ask these really good questions. And sometimes, by the time I got home 15 minutes later, he was like, oh, you know what? I'm going to try that next time. Or, which is a win if you have teenage children, just getting them to say anything remotely related to the fact that, oh, hey, Dad, you're right, is a win, right? But it wasn't me. I was just asking the questions, right? He arrived at his own answer. And this is also valuable as you're trying to teach teenagers or coach teenagers, because you're not really telling them anything new. They're coming up with their own answers, and they are much more likely to implement solutions that they came up with on their own, even if you help them get there. Same holds true for any human being. If they have felt like they have co-created the outcome or they co-created the solution, they are much more likely to adapt it or put it into play. So that's how I go from the role of understanding, like I can't teach them anything, I can't train, I can't mentor in that, but I could coach. Okay. One more quick example. I had a son who played lacrosse. I also played lacrosse. I've coached lacrosse, so I can teach lacrosse. I have first-person experience. I also refereed lacrosse for close to 20 years. And so I have perspectives as a coach, as a player, as a coach, as a referee, and as a parent for the sport of boys lacrosse. If somebody has subject matter expertise, it would be me. So I can wear all of those hats. I could teach, I could train, I could, understand it from a player perspective. I can understand it from a coach perspective. I can understand it from a spectator perspective, referee perspective, all of it. Okay. So sometimes I would be teaching my son in the backyard, like, hey, think about this or do this or try this, right? So providing more information, providing more feedback, providing some first-person experience. Hey, as a referee, one of the things I look for is this. So make sure you're not doing this or make sure you are doing this if you want to be successful. Okay. But then after a game, win or lose, he would get in the car and I would ask the same thing. Do you want to talk about it? Oftentimes it was no, but when it was yes, I didn't provide any more information. I didn't provide any more mentoring. I didn't say, well, that happened to me once and I did this. That would not be helpful there anyway. Don't even try. But what I would say is same scenario, same questioning. Even though I have subject matter expertise here and I could have shared some of it, I just ask questions. What do you think went well? Well, we ran the offense well and we were moving the ball. Okay, so what didn't go so well? Well, we didn't put it in the cage as often as we wanted. Why not? We didn't take enough shots. We didn't get enough good high quality shots. Or we were afraid to shoot. Or the goalie psyched us out or whatever. Okay, what do you think you could do differently next time? Well, we need to move the ball faster and be more decisive in taking close shots. Trying to get a shot on the inside. Oh, okay. Cool. All right. So then that's how you provide some coaching. I know I said I was only going to give a couple examples, but here's one more. Okay? And again, so this is a mentorship example because it's from first-person experience. However, I didn't really have any mentorship or first-person experience in this role. One time I coached my other son. I can't leave any of my kids out of my podcast. My oldest son in soccer. And I didn't really know the first thing about soccer. Basically, they weren't going to have a team if I didn't volunteer to coach. Okay. So I know with soccer, only one person on the field can touch the ball and only inside that one little box. And pretty much you've got to kick the ball and put it in the goal. And that's how you win. Okay. That's about all I know. I know a little bit more now because my kids have played. But at the time, that's pretty much where I was. And I told the people running the league, like, I don't really know what I'm doing. They're like, we just need some good adults there that are good with kids. Okay, fine. So we had some kids on the team that knew what they were doing and some kids that played like travel soccer or whatever. So I didn't tell them like I don't know what I'm doing, but I would say, hey, what are some of your favorite drills? Oh, I like it when you do this drill. Okay, cool. Help me set it up. I don't know what the heck I'm doing. Help me set it up. All right. And they would set it up. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And then show me how you guys ran it. Oh, we ran it like this. Okay, cool. Let's run this drill for 10 minutes. And we would run through a drill, right? And the kids are having fun. They help co-create it. I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I was learning from them. And long story short, we ended up going undefeated and beating the local team from the town over that was like always this dynamo, and they always had like all these high-level travel players on their team. And before the game, the coaches are even like, oh yeah, we're undefeated, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, okay, we'll see what happens. And we crushed them. I'm not saying it was necessarily because of my coaching, but what I didn't do, which a lot of adults would have done there, is I would have said, like, we're going to do it this way. I'm going to teach you some new information. We're going to do these things. I was like, no, let's work with the kids we have. Let's work with the talent level that they have. I'm not going to tell them in this role, because it was not appropriate, that I don't know what I'm doing. But I just kind of came at it from that vantage point and said, okay, help me understand what's going on here. What do you see that you like best? Right. And sometimes, like, there would be penalty kick situations in a game, and I would look at we had 2 kids that were like really, really good. And I would look at those 2 kids and I'd be like, you guys draw something up and do it. And they're like, okay. And they would do it. And so they loved it because I gave them the freedom and flexibility to explore and do their own things and learn. And we were successful. And so they liked that too. And like, I didn't need to be the one that knew everything and knew what was going on. I was just like, hey, how can we have fun and try to have some success here? Okay. So I was able to coach them, not having any subject matter expertise really about the game. Right. But the kids already had some level of knowing how to play. If I had to teach brand new kids how to play, it probably wouldn't be good. If I had to teach them specifically how to dribble a ball and how to throw it in and stuff like that, probably wouldn't be so good. I helped them on their technique a little bit, but mostly through asking questions. Hey, what'd you think about that throw in? It wasn't great. Why? Because I didn't do this. Oh, what do you think you could do differently next time? Well, I could do this. Okay, cool. Let's try that. Okay. And they would do it. Okay. So, to review, a teacher or a trainer, pretty much just sharing information. They could go and learn information, synthesize it, teach it back through frameworks. Don't really need to have their own first-person experience there. Very valuable part of the process, right? You need people to give the foundational elements of what's going on. A mentor is somebody who would do something similar, but also has first-person experience in doing that thing. And then a coach maybe doesn't have any experience doing that thing, but understands human development and performance and can ask the right questions to get the most out of the participant, or even, let's put it correctly, to help the participant get the most out of themselves. The coach is really just asking good questions and helping guide the participant to solutions. So think about that. As you are somebody who's trying to learn something new or on the path to master yourself, what is it you're looking for, and what hat is the person wearing? I will go between all 3 of those hats, because some things I have subject matter expertise in, like digital marketing. I've been doing that a long time, for, I don't know, almost 30 years now. And I'm trained as a coach, and I can teach you the basics. And even if I was trying to teach you, like, I haven't used every email service provider, but I've used like 10 of them. And even though there's probably 100 of them, I could teach you how to use one I haven't used before, because they're all pretty much the same. So I could give you the basics, and I could study it very quickly and learn it and synthesize it and teach it back to you. And I could also give you some first world experience from how I do it. But then once you have figured it out and you say, well, how many emails should I send a day? I'll say, well, you know your audience. How many do you think you should send? 1 a week, 2 a week? Like, how many do you think you should send? I think I should send 1 every week. Okay, we'll try that, see how it goes. So understand, as the consumer of these things, what you're getting, and the utility of the 3 different things, the 3 different roles. And in the marketplace, make sure you understand what you're delivering on, and make sure you're clear. Some people get hung up in the semantics of this stuff, but there are things where I'm very clear. Like, if you were to hire me as a coach, I typically will not take people if they want some help and coaching through building an online empire, digital marketing. I typically will not accept people unless they've already come through my digital marketing mentorship Facebook group. Because going back to what I said before, I know that they already have some subject matter expertise, because I've trained it in there. I've mentored it in there. And so when they now are a coaching client of mine, I can say, what do you think you should do differently? Because I know they know what's going on. I think that's sometimes a disconnect. If you are a coach, or you are a trainer, or you are a mentor, sometimes you are confusing what you're doing, and you're confusing what your participant actually needs, because you're not consciously thinking about these 3 things. Now, eventually, you'll become unconsciously competent about it, and you can just flow seamlessly back and forth between the 3 roles. But if you want the people in your programs, in your courses, to have success, you need to know what you're doing. Which, by the way, here's a question for you. A course or a book, which one of these roles does it fill? Trainer, mentor, or coach? And it's a trick question, because a book that's well written could do all 3. If you think about the book, The 4-Hour Workweek, by Tim Ferriss, which I might talk about every single episode, in that book, he teaches and trains people how to think differently about living a life, something he calls lifestyle design. Instead of working a 9-to-5 job for 40 years, there's a different way to create income. Let me show you how to do it. So he teaches and trains. He also has a fair amount of first-person experience in there where he says, hey, this is something that I did. This is how I did it. Maybe you should consider doing it too. So there's a mentorship piece. However, there's also, at the end of almost every chapter, some questions. So he usually gives you a challenge, like a comfort challenge. So, hey, go do this thing. And then he has some questions that he recommends that you write down or journal and say, like, how did that feel? What could you do differently next time? What results were you looking for? Did you get them? How could you get better results next time? Right? So some good coaching questions. So yes, even a book could provide all three of those things if it's well written and the person understands what they're trying to do. Okay? Same thing with a course. A course can provide information up front, give you the baseline, move you through the path of mastery, get you going a little bit, get you from step 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, and then maybe around step 5, they stop giving so much information. They lay off the information overload and they back up and say, okay, now knowing what you know, what would you do next? This is choose your own adventure time. If you want to do this, turn to page whatever. And I've actually seen some courses that are like that. My friend James Wedmore actually does that in his course Business by Design, which I'll put a link to a video training series that he has called Rise of the Digital CEO. It's starting soon. If you happen to be listening to this in the June 2021 timeframe. But he does that in his Business by Design course. He teaches a couple modules that are fundamental pieces. You need to know this, this, and this. And then he gets to the point where he goes, okay, now knowing what you know, and you're creating a business by design, you're creating something that you want, which of the following do you want to do? And it's like choose your own adventure. Are you going to create a course? Are you going to do a mentorship program or a recurring revenue thing? Do you need to launch your opt-in page, build your email list? And then he has modules and checklists for each one of those things. So that's why I love the stuff that he does in the marketplace, because he seamlessly moves back and forth between the role of trainer or teacher and then mentor, because he'll say, hey, here's something I did. When I first started doing this, I was focusing on YouTube, but now I moved to this. So he gives you some first-person experience and mentorship. And then he says, okay, now knowing what you know, what do you want to do? And then there's a lot of reflective coaching questions and feedback things. And he does coaching as part of his course. So when people come on a group Zoom call, he does this thing called laser coaching where somebody gets on there and they're like, okay, James, what should I do? And he's like, well, what do you think you should do? Which is what a coach does, right? It's like, did you go through all those modules? Yeah. Did you learn those things? Okay. Now that I understand you have a baseline of information, what do you think you should do? Well, I think I should do this, that, and whatever. Okay. Have you tried that yet? No. Why don't you go try that and come back and let me know how it goes? All right, so he wears those hats very, very well. So it'd be another great example for you to go through. You can watch his Rise of the Digital CEO series. And then I would highly recommend, I bought his course. I've been a student of James, a coachee of James for almost 15 years now. So he's got some really good stuff in the marketplace. So if you want a good example of somebody that does it, go check out his stuff, okay? So pay attention. Are you teaching, training? Are you mentoring? Or are you coaching? Because when you can figure that out as both a consumer of those things, but also somebody who's providing those things in the marketplace, not only will you unleash your own awesome on the world, but you'll help others unleash their awesome too. See ya.
Thanks for listening to Unleash the Awesome. Please be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen to your podcasts. And please share us on your favorite social media platforms using #UnleashAwesome.